your favorite artist probably isn't using this secret hidden in plain sight that could turn even the most mediocre album into a masterpiece? The answer? Storytelling, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. Let's break it down. What really makes the perfect album is the story that the album creates outside of the music. And that's where my master's degree in branding and integrated communications with a concentration in public relations comes in. All of that is just a fancy way to say advertising and marketing. Now, why should you care about all of this, and what does it have to do with your favorite artist? I'm not gonna get too deep into it because I should be making a whole separate video based on this tweet that you can pause and read. Most albums by your favorite artist probably suck. Telling a story is the secret sauce that's in every great album. I'm gonna break down the recipe and exactly why it's more important than you think. A story generally has 7 things: characters, resolution to a conflict, tension leading up to that resolution, which includes suspense, foreshadowing, and a plot twist, all within the context of a time and place, and glued together by an idea, which includes a message, concept, and theme. I made the perfect album without making any music myself and using this secret just to prove how easy it is.
KRXOVR Media.
I arranged songs from Unknown T's 4 projects to date, and I made the perfect album that I'm calling Adolescent Diamonds and Rising Smoke. And yes, it's just a combination of all 4 of those project names, but it's also related to the theme, which is growth and redemption. Love, faith, and mental health are also sub-themes that repeat throughout this album. We'll come back to this at the end, but the message is simply, don't take for granted. And the concept is that Unknown T isn't the main character of this story, and I'll show how this all comes together in the art that I made for the album cover. Chapter 1 of this story is called The Ends, and it sets the scene while introducing some of the key details that we need to start this story. Listen, 2200 starts us off by giving us a glimpse of exactly what we can expect. It introduces a young Unknown T, his mindset, and all of the things that he's involved in. It also foreshadows where we end up in chapter 2 because of what happens in the next song.
And I can't lie, yeah, I used to sell some drugs to the addicts.
This song introduces us to a collection of side characters, which are the addicts in the Ends and their kids. It also gives us insight into Unknown T's thoughts while he's navigating the day-to-day of being in this environment. And there's one line in this song that stood out and helped me name this whole chapter.
I'm trapped in the ends with skanks, drug addicts, and drillers, ballies, and dingers.
To me, there's something poetic about calling the beginning of the story the ends. While this does introduce key topics and sensitive subject matter, this next song helps paint a way more detailed picture.
My shawty beg me to leave that trap. Please, baby, don't act like that.
Now we have a specific place within the Ends that we can imagine for a moment, and we're introduced to a girlfriend that we're not going to count as a character just yet, and you'll see why 2 songs from now. Prison and police being mentioned several times, coupled with AJ Tracey starting his verse off with
First off, free SQ, free Johnny.
foreshadows exactly where this story is going. It communicates the inevitable end to this lifestyle for Unknown T and the people around him that we're introduced to in the next song.
When my niners get round, they dread it. Load that fryer, step round and shed it.
The main purpose of Avengers is to introduce us to Unknown T's friends, and this works perfectly with the narrative because they actually speak to each other throughout the song.
Yo, T, the man chatting and I can't listen to me.
On a surface level, this is the first song where the title doesn't really make sense, but this next track is what ties it all together.
Luckily, friends with Avengers ran the get back, they ain't got back since.
Right Hand makes sense of the last song title since the Avengers were never actually mentioned. Sonically, this introduces us to Unknown T's duality and is the basis for the conflict of him having 1 foot in and 1 foot out of his lifestyle. And remember that girlfriend from earlier? Well, Right Hand does 2 things. It starts blurring the lines of exactly who this girl is and shows you that you need to be paying very close attention to exactly what these artists are saying. Lyrics like
Rotate all my good ones, but my day one like yours the plan.
show us a sense of intentionality once you end up hearing
Step out, don't pre up, cause that's my good ones.
and the purpose of this is to reveal exactly who, or rather what, his Goodums truly is. But it's also not the last metaphor of its kind on this album. Speaking of which, it was confirmed by Unknown T that this was inspired by the metaphor behind the Tupac song Me and My Girlfriend.
All I need in this life is me and my girlfriend.
And this now serves as the perfect transition into Now this confirms what he's been talking about the whole time, but it still references and foreshadows women as being a part of the future of this story. And this is a nod to Unknown T's real life friendship with Digga D formed in prison. This song further explores Unknown T's internal conflict, and it demonstrates how depression and declining mental health manifests itself as anger, violence, and recklessness when young men don't have healthy outlets to express themselves. There's also a bit of social commentary highlighting how the stresses of life in the ends can lead to irrational decisions.
This life of stress, I keep on sinning.
This shows us a sense of redeemability and introduces us to Unknown T's relationship with God, foreshadowing his awareness of a need to change. This further builds on the sense of duality that we got from Right hand, but the darker side. And this functions as a real life reference to other members of the 98s being in prison, which if you know, you know. And what makes that even more powerful is that this was written before Unknown T went to prison himself, which is why he says,
Try don't keep beating my drumming, I'm going to trial, it's all or nothing.
and explains why the next chapter starts with,
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, T.
Yo, baby girl, how you feeling?
Now we fast forward to the point where Unknown T's lifestyle has landed him in prison, and this is the first time we hear an actual woman's voice in the album. This reveals both the change in setting and exactly who he's talking about when he says,
I'm in a what but this tug man vacation, got me missing my lover.
Now at this point, Unknown T is forced to sit down with nothing but himself and his own thoughts. This song serves as a callback to another line that we hear previously in the album.
How can I beef these punks? I'm a tug man living.
There's even more foreshadowing here by revealing more redeemable qualities through Unknown T's vulnerability. This creates an atmosphere of self-reflection which continues throughout his adolescence.
Pain is the essence of the game in adolescence. You violate, I'm gripping on a weapon.
This song represents Unknown T's time in prison with Digga D, and it communicates exactly why he is who he is and has so much trouble growing up. But this doesn't last long because
Fresh on, straight out of the slammer.
and this song begins a sequence of drill songs, which is the next major sonic switch up in the album. It also reminds us of Unknown T's past life when he says things like,
Hands up, hold it, squeeze them bust.
now he's reverting back to his old ways because prison was the only reason he had to really sit down and reflect on his decisions. But on the other hand, I see this as an opportunity to highlight stress addiction, which is literally a chemical reaction in your body similar to a relapse when you're no longer in a familiar but unhealthy environment or circumstance. And now this is the boiling point that forces Unknown T to seek guidance from somebody special to him.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
This skit shifts the tone of the story by introducing us to a character giving a prayer to help Unknown T atone for his sins, which was foreshadowed earlier in the album by the song Prison.
This life of stress, I keep on sinning.
This serves as the first plot twist to help further build upon the tension. And I love this because it reminds me of,
Lord God, I come to you a sinner.
and like Good Kid, Mad City, we don't let this moment go to waste.
Mumsy told me always revise that script is essential.
Bible Love introduces Unknown T's mother into the story, and it confirms his redeemability despite his problematic past. The somber tone emphasizes his mental health decline as he reflects on missing his friends. However, this line
I got love for my grandma, time is up, don't know if she's round for a while.
will mean so much more by the end of the story.
Hella war in the world, there's a whole heap of past, our life still matter.
At this point, we're starting to see signs of social and political consciousness. Unknown T is showing us that he's growing out of adolescence and doubling down on his relationship with God. Moments like this help you humanize other youth in the ends who relate to Unknown T's experience, because what's happening to them is a reflection of way bigger issues in the world.
Sweet symphony, sometimes I struggle mentally.
This interlude builds upon Unknown T's relationship with the woman in his life. He's accepting a breakup while still reminiscing on the relationship that he had with his ex. And now we have an even more somber tone as we hit the lowest emotional point in the album. As of now, Unknown T has lost everything important to him, not even having a girlfriend to help cope with the fact that his friends who are in prison are no longer here anymore. The two things you really need to pay attention to is when he says,
Time flies now, I'm putting the youths all on.
and then follows that up with,
My life caught up, my goodums all gone.
and now what he means by his goodums becomes ambiguous again. It could mean that he's letting go of something from his past life that no longer serves him, or that he's really truly accepting the end of his relationship.
How can I trip about a bitch that I never had? She must think I'm living in
Wonderland speaks to a more widely relatable phase of when you start finding yourself after a breakup and feel like you're on top of the world. This song brings back sonic elements from drill, but not as dark as we got earlier in the album, because Unknown T is appreciating the life that he's building for himself. And with this opening line,
These lights and these cameras are blinding. Hold me some watches, this shit is timeless.
you should start realizing that certain things are being repeated to make a point.
You're my life too real, listen, but it's life in a joke.
This song is just one big reminder of all the things that Unknown T is dealing with. He's coping with life struggles while also thinking about how to make a better life for himself and finding love. Ultimately, this closing line
There's no time, no waste time.
unlocks the conclusion to this story.
Bad now, wish that I stayed unknown, brother, until we meet again.
This picks up on the introspective tone from the end of the previous chapter. And this continues the process of Unknown T accepting that he has to let go of things. But this doesn't mean that he doesn't still find himself getting flashbacks of the past.
Back in the days, my bros and me table, my throwback.
At this point, Unknown T is still reminiscing, but in a more celebratory way as he addresses all of the things that he's come to terms with. And lastly, we're reminded of all the characters from Unknown T's childhood, except for the most important one in this story, Time. And it works out that this producer's tag is exactly what we're experiencing right now.
Nostalgia.
And lastly, this song sets up the big reveal. The message is simply, don't take time for granted. And the concept is that Unknown T isn't the main character of this story, it's time itself. We view Unknown T from the first person perspective of what time is doing to him. Both the positives of maturing and healing from his trauma, and the negatives of everything that he's lost up until this point. While Unknown T is talking about the ops in his life throughout the album, we finally realize that time is an enemy to all of us.
Y'all stop trying to figure me out, maybe I'm a driller. You wanna make babies with that elegant figure.
Bon Appetit showcases the life of luxury that Unknown T has earned for himself. He's got his confidence back, he's moving forward with his life, all while continuing to reflect on his relationship with God.
If I got guilty, I would have been internally scarred, but look, God gave me a chance.
And for the last time, he references his goodums again.
Don't pre up, cause that's my good ones, back to make all my old things go crazy.
But this time, it's a new girlfriend, confirming that he's left behind his old life.
Late night studio, sitting with my brody. I got it right to cop another stony.
And then we close it out with this last track where he talks about being in the studio and doubles down on his ambition to continue bettering his life through music. This whole story comes together with the art that I made for the album cover. The watch here symbolizes time, and I specifically picked a Rolex because it was mentioned in Glee. The diamonds on the watch represent the riches that Unknown T has earned through switching his life around, but also he himself and the people around him being diamonds formed under the pressure of their life circumstances. The watch is set to 3 o'clock both to symbolize quarter life or adolescence, or the UK slang 3, which is used for free when somebody's friends are in prison.
Free up my goons in the jailhouse, bang to the gates, break open.
The watch is slightly covered by smoke to symbolize navigating through the uncertainties of life, but with just enough vision to move forward. And lastly, red is so dominant here because that's the color that Unknown T used for his debut album, Blood Diamond. The way to create a story around an album is by getting an audience involved and invested enough to make other people care, and thus creating dialogue around that album to give it context in an interesting and meaningful way. For an album like this, what that could look like is relating everything to time. And that could start with something like archiving Instagram posts and only posting throwbacks
Let me table my throwback
to different points in time, both good and bad, and then encouraging the audience to do the same. There can also be a giveaway for select fans where they win a smartwatch of their choice. And for awareness with the general public, a featured article in Time magazine during June for Men's Mental Health Month. All of this creates a story around the album and the artist that generates momentum that makes both the existing audience excited and potential new listeners curious for release day. This then creates a dialogue for everybody to participate in online and makes content creators want to create videos like my album reaction to Blood Diamond, which you should check out next.